The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. We got ourselves a pretty exciting show all the way around. I'm going to be joined in the second segment by members of the New York band Young Allies, including their frontman, Fritz Michel. Really interesting backstory on our guy, Fritz. Excited to bring him on the air. He's going to have a lot of great insight, a lot of great advice for you, and it's going to be really, really informative and thought-provoking. Excited to have you all here. We got some really important news to talk about, and so I want to get right into it. Let's first bring in our co-host for this week. We are joined by Zach Sloan. Hey, Zach.
How's it going, Ryan?
It is good. It is always good to see your smiling face and your very well-furnitured recording space there with all the stuff you got back there.
Hey,
how you been, sir?
I'm good, man. The fort had to come down because I had to get some stuff done. So, got cables and gear sprawled about now. But, at least it looks like it's being used for something less fun than a fort.
Yes, indeed. And I see by your caption there under your name here on the video broadcast, you are going by Zach Sloan, new music out now.
Yes.
Tell us about this.
I released a new song called The Burned. Last month, my new song that came out was called Conspiracy. And then The Burned has come out. And here's what happened, Ryan. 5 years ago, I joined Dear Marcia. And at that time, I had 2 albums worth of material ready to go. And I joined a band, and I never released it. So now I'm going through it all, being like, what do I want to release from all this? So I'm just releasing it as I see fit. So that's what's going on. So I have another one coming out in August.
Well, we all want to hear more new Zach Sloan music. And you viewers and listeners might already be a fan of his music and not even know it. If you're listening to the video broadcast and you're jamming out to the music that we play before we go live, that's a Zach Sloan original there. So, just if you like where it is, there's more where that came from.
Yeah, that was one I wrote because you asked for it, and I was like, oh, I can do this. But the guitar I wanted for that was being worked on. And so I went to a middle school and borrowed one of their Stratocasters so I could do it. So that's not even my Strat on that song. That's a borrowed one. I don't think I told the school I was doing that.
That's marvelous, and excited to have new music out for you. Unfortunately, we have some bad news to follow that really good news. In fact, I wouldn't even call it bad news. It is unbelievably crappy news, and there's no other way to say it. Sad to report that Glenn Hansard, the Grammy and Academy Award-winning Irish singer, made popular by the 2007 film Once, has died. He died on July 29th as we record this in a motorcycle crash in Dublin. He was 56 years old. I am just absolutely crushed by this. I really, really enjoyed Glenn, and Once is one of my favorite movies. As we record this, the details of his death are still kind of being investigated, so I don't want to get into too much detail about the circumstances because we might know more about it by the time the podcast goes up or by the time this gets onto SiriusXM. But instead, I want to talk about what we do know for sure, which is how powerful of an impact Glenn Hansard has made as a musician, as an indie artist, as the first person I think of when I think of the word busker. Like Glenn Hansard is the first name that comes to mind there. Just a powerful figure in music. And I will admit on the front end, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of Glenn Hansard. If you tell me to name 3 Frames albums, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. But he still means a lot to me because of the impact that the movie Once made in my life and how important that movie was to me and just how amazing of a songwriter he was. And, I went and rewatched Once yesterday, just in honor of Glenn, just because I wanted to remind myself of how great that movie was, Zach. And I hadn't seen it in like 15, 20 years. And I was afraid that like it would be like millennial nostalgia where, you know, I would watch it again 20 years later and be like, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Not the case. Still really freaking good. And if you have not seen the movie once, viewers and listeners, I encourage you to do so, especially if you're any kind of music fan. This movie, first and foremost, is a celebration of music and everything that makes it beautiful. And I know you're a fan of Once as well, Zach. But before we kind of nerd out on Once, I'd love for you to just tell me a little bit about what Glenn has meant to you. I think you're more of an expert on just his career generally than I am.
Yeah, so I was familiar with his work before Once, not like in depth. I used to date a DJ back in the day, and she was into the Frames, and so I started listening. I didn't realize who he was. I found out later that he was also in the Commitments, which is something I'd seen earlier as well. But I used to listen to the Frames a lot just by virtue of dating this DJ in like the early 2000s, and if you're not familiar with the Frames, I would suggest starting with the album The Cost, because The Cost has the Frames doing Falling Slowly, which is from Once, and they do in my opinion, better job of it than what's in Once. Not to slag on Once. It's a great song. I think the Frames do it really, really well. But what Once and Glenn Hansard means to me is that anytime I'm in a creative rut or I'm feeling a lull, in fact, I've kind of felt that way lately, so I'm going to do this probably this weekend. You watch Once and you will be inspired to create again. Whether that is music or art or whatever, it is exceptionally inspirational in its realism and its portrayal of people making music because they love it. And that's the point of Once, is they're making music because they love it. It's not a rock star movie, right? It's these guys, or this guy, this man and this woman who are making this music for the sake of the art and what that entails. And then it just so happens the music is really freaking good. So that movie means a lot to me, and I will be watching it again shortly because it's overdue.
It's a beautiful movie. And for those who have not seen it, let me tell you a little bit about about the movie and how it came together. Because I think in addition to just being a really awesome story of like the backstory of Once, I think there's a lot of great lessons in it for indie artists. I mean, to call Once a low budget film would require a gift for understatement. A few months ago we talked about the movie Obsession, which has was a massive success, and that is a low budget film. Compared to Once, Obsession is like Titanic in terms of budget. It's an Avengers movie. Like, I'm pretty sure, Zach, they made the movie Once for a nickel and got like 2 cents back in change. The whole thing looks like it was shot on a Sony Handycam. They didn't have any permits, right? So all the outdoor scenes in Dublin, they just like shot out in the open, no permits. Like, they were shooting at Glenn Hansard's house. They were just anywhere they could go. And one of the benefits of the fact that it's an extraordinarily low budget film and it looks the part is it makes all of the music making scenes feel super authentic. Like, you feel like when you're watching this movie, which is all about like these two characters, like just called guy and girl, like they don't even give them names in the movie. It's about the two of them making an album together. And because it's so low budget, like you feel like you're just like sitting in the room watching them make this movie. Like you're just another member of the band. Like, it's so raw and authentic. And it brings you like closer to the music making process and what it is like to be a musician creating for the love of the art than any movie that's come out since. Just a really incredible movie made by the director John Carney. You might also know him from the movie Begin Again, which is kind of like a higher budget version of Once with like bigger name actors, or the movie Sing Street or one of those things. But I mean, Once I think is his best work. And also like the acting in it is impressive because Glenn the two leads, Glenn Hansard, who passed away, and the Czech singer Markéta Erglova, neither of them were professional actors. In fact, Hansard was never originally meant to be in the movie as an actor. John Carney was friends with Glenn Hansard. I think they were in a band together. I think they were in the Commitments together, actually.
I believe
and Carney talked to Hansard about like wanting to make a movie about a busker and asked Hansard to write the songs for the movie. And originally the part of the guy was supposed to be played by Cillian Murphy. And somewhere along the production process, Murphy drops out and Carney asks Hansard to be the actor in the movie. He'd never really acted before. And Marketa Irglova had never really acted before. And so these are two people that are not professional actors, but are professional musicians, and they turn in this like beautiful raw acting performance. And they did some kind of interesting production tricks to kind of make it, to make their performances as good as they were. One of the things that Carney did was for all of the exterior shots in Dublin, he shot them with a long lens so that it would just be Hansard and Irglova basically just standing around having a conversation together, and the camera was super far away. So they didn't have a camera in their face, and much of their dialogue was just improvised. It was just two people talking to each other who, by the way, had like unbelievable chemistry together. Like they were clearly like, very much, enamored with each other, and you could just see it on the screen, like this very powerful connection they had. And it was all the more brought out by the fact that they didn't have a camera in their face while they're acting all of these scenes together. And in fact, like the most famous, like iconic scene of the movie at the end, where Glenn Hansard asks Marketa Irglova's character if she still loves her husband, and she says to him in her native language, Czech, "It is you I love." And they don't put the subtitle in the movie, so you don't actually know what she's saying to him. And you don't find out till later, like, if you Google it or something. But all of that was improvised. Not even Glenn Hansard knew in that moment that what she was saying in that scene. So like all of that was like authentic, genuine reactions. And you just end up with this like really raw, beautiful movie that like made, every critic's top 10 list in 2007, despite like, having no budget. Falling Slowly, which was kind of like the biggest song in that movie written by Glenn Hansard, won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The Once album then won the Grammy Award for Best Album for Visual Media. The movie itself was then a Broadway musical was created based on that movie, which won 8 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. I saw the Broadway production. It had Kristen Milioti from How I Met Your Mother playing Girl. She was incredible. And like, I'm not going to be one of those purists that's like, oh no, only the movie's good. No, the Broadway musical's really damn good too. And I mean, I know at this point I'm just like, basically just giving a synopsis of the movie, but like, this is such a good movie, man.
It is, and I looked it up just now. The budget for the film Once was, if you convert it, is $150,000 American dollars.
$150,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
I'm
crazy.
trying to wonder, like, Zach, if that budget was $150,000, then John Carney just put $140,000 of it and stuck it in his pocket.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot, like, first of all, like, that's extremely low budget for any kind of motion picture.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, this movie looks like it was shot for less.
And I think that adds, as you said, to the charm and the sort of believability of it. Because anybody who's ever been in a songwriting situation with somebody else, or like the vulnerability that has to exist, even if you're not romantically interested into each other, but just like those scenes spoke to me as a songwriter. Like, I have been in similar situations with people, and maybe there wasn't like a love interest in it, but there is that like opening up to somebody and learning about somebody while you're writing, and all of that stuff. And the performances are just so on the nose.
Yeah.
But I think because they aren't actors, I think because they are musicians, that's what makes it better. Because I would contrast it with Begin Again, which I also think is a great movie, right? Same director, similar sort of angle. Begin Again is very slick and I think inspirational in its own right, but doesn't hit me as a musician like Once does.
Yeah.
And I think a credit to that is how low budget it feels, because musicians are inherently, low budget unless you're, Guns N' Roses. It's just, it's just a phenomenal movie, and the music is exceptional. So if you have not checked that out, I would encourage all of our listeners to dive in, because it's wonderful. And also check out the frames, because they're super dope.
It got so much of the process right. Even like in the scene where after they finish the album, the first thing they do is bring the CD into a car.
Yes, I've done that so many times.
Because every musician knows you don't know how good the album sounds until you give it the car test. Because everything sounds great in the studio with all the big time speakers. You need to see how it sounds in your Toyota Tercel before you know whether the album's done. So I'm sure every musician watches that movie and they're like, yes, that's it.
So I was cleaning out some CDs today, and I found this. I don't know if you can see it. It says DM album. This is the Dear Marsha album from 5 years ago. We burned CDs and kept them for a week and drove around in our cars listening to them.
This is the car test.
When I finished the Jeremy Facknick's record I did, when I delivered it to him, before he would pay me, and this is no shade to Jeremy Facknitz, I love the dude, but before he would pay me, he made me sit in his car with him, and we listened to the whole thing. And then he went, okay, there you go. And then he paid me. Like, that is such a real thing. And that scene, everybody who's made a record has done that. And if you haven't, you need to be doing that.
That's absolutely true. Because you don't know if the album, you don't know if it sounds right until you hear it on like the same kind of car that all your fans are going to hear it on.
Yeah.
A couple other things about this story in terms of like lessons for indie creators. There's a lot of connections between the Once movie and when I was talking with Katie Zaccardi about the original Rocky movie, how what made both of those movies so good that make them resonate with people is, as Zach noted, the authenticity of it. Because these movies don't resonate in spite of their ultra low budget. They resonated because of their ultra low budget. And, because it made the end result look more raw. It brought it down to our level. Like you watch Once, you feel like you're just watching like two friends of yours fall in love and make an album together, as opposed to like a slick Hollywood film like Begin Again, which is, a similar story. But again, because it's two big stars, Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo, and because it's got, a budget that's probably like 100 times the budget of Once, it loses some of its heart. I think another interesting aspect of this story in terms of its, of this movie, in terms of its power for indie creators is the fact that this movie kind of put Glenn Hansard on the map and made him a mainstream artist. He was nearly 40 years old.
He was 36 when they cast him.
Yeah. So like he was, this is, we think of Glenn Hansard as an overnight success, but as you would know, Zach, because of all that, he had been at it for about 20 years before this movie came out and he got his big break. And I think that's an important lesson for all of the indie creators out there. Like it's easy to think because you've been at this for 10, 15, 20 years and it's not working out that like you're never going to get there. But, Glenn Hansard's story is the one I see more often, which is, a 20-year overnight success. And, you just keep grinding, you keep pushing at it. And then one day, a movie that you make for $150,000 has a song on it that just hits everybody just the right way. And suddenly you're an Academy Award winner. I mean, it's a really inspirational story. It shows it's never too late.
And you can go back. So the first Frames record I could find, and I don't know if this was the first one, was a 3-song EP that they put out in 91. So he had been at this for 15 years just with the Frames before this hit. And nobody ever really makes it with their first band. So he'd been playing, like, I bet you're right, I bet at least 20 years of pounding the pavement. It's a super inspirational story from the angle of the movie. It's inspirational story from the angle of the people who were in the movie and the people who made the movie, and it's just a terrible loss. And I found out, I didn't know this happened until right before the show. Ryan's actually the one who told me.
Oh, I'm sorry I had to be the one that had to break it to you. It's,
I mean, it sucks, man. Like, this is somebody that as a musician I have just had an immense amount of respect for a long time. And it makes me really sad when we lose somebody like that.
I'm about to make this about me for a second, so I'm just putting that trigger warning right up here at the front. But, something I tied together with this loss and, losing Clive Davis that we broke that on the show a couple months ago. I can't help but think about the fact that, like, as these people pass away, like, it means that I'm starting to get old enough that a lot of the people who had like some kind of formative effect on who I am and like what I care about in terms of art are starting to pass away. And like, that really kind of sucks. Like, and, something that I, kind of have to wrestle with. And I think it's going to happen to all of us who are of that age as we get older. Like, we're going to start to see a lot of the people who had an impact on us. And like, and I mean, that, God, that movie and that album had an impact. Like, it's probably, the Once soundtrack is probably one of my 5 favorite albums ever. And to see those people kind of come out of our life is really brutal. But I'm like that album, Zach, I was insufferable with that album for like an 8-month stretch. I like poor Elisa Rockdock's husband, Evan, I don't think has still fully mentally recovered by the fact that I was at his apartment for a whole day in 2007, recording my own rendition of Falling Slowly in his studio as a Valentine's Day gift from my college girlfriend, and doing about 900 takes because I kept screwing it up. And if anybody ever finds that recording and listens to me singing Falling Slowly, like, your first thought's going to be, that was the best out of 900 takes, huh? But I mean, I wanted to say, I wanted to like perform that song so bad because like I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest song. This is the greatest album. I never need to listen to another album after this. But it was like that good for me at the time, and like it still impacts the work that I do. And like whenever I think of like anybody who's making an album ever, and I'm ever involved in that process with any artist, like the first thing I always think of is the movie Once, and like what that history was like, what that story was, and how it relates to musicians today. It's heartbreaking. Let me get on my soapbox. Just quick little soapbox moment here. I know I'm going to like offend some people with this opinion because I know some people really like these things, but I wouldn't be that upset if we just got rid of all the motorcycles in the world, huh? Like, do we need motorcycles? Like, can we live without motorcycles? Like, I think, net positive if just all the motorcycles leave the world. Like, who thought, like, hey, I got an idea. Let's create a mode of transportation that has all of the speed and danger of an automobile, but none of the airbags or seatbelts or structure to keep people alive. Like, how about no more motorcycles? There, I want to take them all away.
You know what? I think today I agree with you.
Yeah, it's easy to be anti-motorcycle today. I'm taking it. Admittedly, it's an easy stance at this moment, but like, oh God, it's just like, so preventable. Just really, really heartbreaking. All right. So we got a little bit of time here. We can talk about another story that you actually brought our way, Zach. BTS has announced that they will not be submitting their music for consideration at the 69th Grammy Awards, which is scheduled for February 7th, 2027. The group made this announcement on Wednesday. The announcement is landing just over a month after the Recording Academy unveiled a new Best Asian Pop Music Performance category. The Academy has noted with respect to this new category, quote, it recognizes artistic excellence in Asian pop music performances originating from or widely recognized within Asian markets, including but not limited to K-pop, J-pop, and C-pop, with meaningful use of one or more Asian languages. Presumably, BTS's decision to pull their music from Grammy consideration has to do with their objections to this new category. On their social media, all the BTS members said, quote, we have decided not to submit for Grammy consideration this year. We hope our music can be heard and loved for what it is, rather than being divided by region or language. We thank BTS Army and everyone who has always stood by us. So BTS is, not happy about sort of being this new Best Asian Pop Performance category being added. Presumably, it would be a foregone conclusion that BTS would win this award. It would be their first Grammy Award after years of being snubbed by the Grammys. And so I guess BTS's feeling is, oh, now you're going to create this special category that will win, but you won't let us win any of the major categories. And so they said, we're taking our ball and going home.
I think it's worse than that, Ryan.
Talk to me. What do you think?
So the timeline, and I mean, you follow the Grammys closer than I do, but the reason I stopped following the Grammys is because of crap like this. Do you remember there was this female artist? I don't know if you've heard of her, but her name was Beyonce, and she made a country record. Remember that?
Yes,
and she
indeed.
won the Grammy for Best Country Album. And the next year, the Grammys changed the country categories to contemporary and like modern country or something. Basically, they're like, okay, we're gonna give like people who are making like new country or like Beyonce's their category over there. And then, hey, old white guys, here's your category. We got to make sure that you're happy over there.
Don't
And now-
worry, Merle Haggard. We're still taking care of you.
And then BTS comes back off of a hiatus, and it's the writing's on the wall. If they don't win the Grammys, if they don't win a Grammy, there's going to be a problem. But the Grammys, in the similar mindset, near as I can tell, are like, well, we don't want to take away from these guys, so let's make a category. And BTS is like, screw that. We're not playing this stupid game. I'm sure that the BTS is heartbroken not to get their little trophy. I guess they'll just have to go to their arenas and stadiums of fans who are going to see them and buying their merchandise. This is a bunch of crap. This is why people don't take the Grammys seriously anymore. This is ridiculous and good for BTS. I don't even like their music that much, but this is the most rock and roll thing that has happened to the Grammys in a long time, and I love them for it.
So I kind of have a more nuanced opinion on this. I think we can live in a world where multiple things can be true.
The guy who wants to get rid of motorcycles is going nuanced?
That's right. Yeah. Ban all motorcycles from the world guy has now found perspective with this argument. I think two things can be true. One, it is absolutely ridiculous that BTS has never won a Grammy. Of all the Grammys that they could have been nominated for in like the pop category, and given the total global impact that BTS has, they're the biggest band in the world. Like, it is crazy that they keep getting snubbed year after year. And that is true. And I think both them and the BTS army have a reason to be upset, as many artists do, because there are plenty of artists who, get snubbed by the Grammys, including your girl Beyonce, Zach Sloan. I also think it is true that a category specifically dedicated to celebrating Asian pop is not a bad idea. We have nationality-specific, culture-specific, language-specific Grammy Awards. We have, Best Regional Mexican Album. We have, genre albums, things like that. And I think at this point, J-pop, K-pop, Mandopop are unique enough as styles of music and of genres. I think having a category to celebrate that music and to award a Grammy for it is long overdue. And so I don't think that, even though I think that BTS has been getting snubbed, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing to include this category. And, maybe BTS wins it this year and it gives them sort of the springboard to win one of the four major categories in a subsequent year. And so I feel like the long game should be taken here. I mean, the only benefit I think to BTS not submitting an album for inclusion is perhaps it could be an opportunity to celebrate many of the other great artists in these genres, because maybe one of them can win a Grammy and people will find out, oh, there's actually other great, J-pop and K-pop bands out there other than BTS. And maybe we get to spotlight one of them, which is kind of cool.
I think, taking it down a notch, I actually agree with you in principle. I think my issue with this is the timeline. My issue is with the way that they did this after Beyonce wins. BTS comes back, and now they make the change. How long have they had to recognize this? Is K-pop new? Is J-pop new? Is this a new phenomenon? No, this has been around. They've had plenty of time to do this, and it irritates the everlasting crap out of me that they're doing it now. I would love to see these artists be like celebrated. And like I said, this isn't even my kind of music. I'm a rock and roll guy, but like, good on them for making music people love. And the Grammys is effectively like making the problem worse this way. And they're as per usual. The Grammys are just 10 years behind.
That's if that's not like just the Grammys brand altogether. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a fair criticism, and I think I'm with you that these categories should have been like we should have had a best Asian pop, or even separated by like J-pop, K-pop, and C-pop, since they're all very different in terms of how they sound. Like this, these should have been categories that existed 10 years ago, as you said. And I think the timing is suspicious. It sure does seem like they're creating an album just to give sort of a get out of our face Grammy to BTS, as opposed to really giving them a shot at one of the four major, awards: Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best New Artist, Album of the Year. But I mean, I'm willing to be happy that we're making progress in acknowledging these genres of music and giving them their due in the Grammys, even if the reason for why these categories exist is kind of a suspicious one. But I mean, it's only a matter of time before the dam breaks with BTS. Like, the music's too good, their impact on music is too significant that at some point, the dam is going to break, and we're going to see this very deserving band win, one of these major Grammy awards. It's just an unfortunate circumstance. I hope that they find their way back to the Academy. And I also hope that the Academy gets their act together and stops with this nonsense.
Well, I'll tell you what, they gained a fan in me by doing this, so good on them. I'll give them another honest listen. I've always respected them, but who knows? Maybe I'll enjoy it more now because I feel more akin to the rebelliousness of BTS.
I mean, I'm starting to think you haven't actually listened to their music. Are you sure you weren't listening to like some other band that you thought was BTS? Because I feel like if you were listening to BTS, you'd be down with it.
I'm not saying it's not good.
They're real good.
It's just not my thing. I think "Swim" is like a great song. That was one of their big ones, right? Like, I think that's a great song. It's not for me. But I'm gonna honestly give them another shot because they are awesome, and I am impressed by them.
Oh, good on you. All right, we're going to take a quick break, be joined by our guest, Fritz Michel from Young Allies. Don't go anywhere, you lovely people. Keep right here and keep checking out Break the Business. Break the in cooperation with Ryan Kairalla, PA. Ryan Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. So we talked in a prior episode about the original Rocky movie and how that was considered low budget. And that movie had about $1 million budget in 1976. And once, as you said, had a $150,000 budget, which again, I feel like they inflated in 2006. I mean, and again, I do not believe that movie cost $150,000. I refuse. I don't know what they could have spent $150,000 on. I mean, that movie was shot with that thing could have been shot on a Fun Saver camera for all I know. Like that was shot on people's flip phones. And, I don't if there was $150,000, it must have been because they just spent $148,000 on the best craft services table you could possibly eat, just like caviar at the wrap party. I don't know how that movie could have possibly had a 6-figure budget. I refuse to believe it, Zach. God, I love Once. And I miss Glenn Hansard so much, bud.
Me too. You know, it kind of reminds me of like when you look at the original music videos, when you would see just like nobody knew what they were doing to make the first music videos in like the late 70s. It was
Yes.
just like you're like their budget was X number of their budget was like a 6-pack, and that's
Yeah.
what they had. That's what once feels like a much better version of that, and that's why I love it.
Yeah. Oh, God. Very special movie. Let's go ahead, my friend, bring out our guest this week. I'm excited to talk to this guy. He is the founder, songwriter, and frontman of the New York band Young Allies. And his road to music was anything but typical. He was born in France to American parents, graduated from Yale with a history degree, spent time in environmental journalism, and built a full career as an actor, director, and dramaturg across Broadway, film, and TV before starting over years in as an independent songwriter and musician. Young Allies recently released its debut EP, Fingers Entwined, today. You can find out more at youngallies.com. We are happy to welcome Fritz Michel onto Break the Business. Hi, Fritz.
Hey, Ryan, how are you? Glad to be
Doing
here.
very, very well, sir. We have been talking a lot in the first segment about our loss of music legend Glenn Hansard. As a fellow songwriter and a Broadway aficionado, so you probably know a thing or two
saw
about the
this.
Once musical.
Of course.
Do you have any connection points on what Glenn Hansard's death means to you?
You know, for sure. I remember the movie when it came out. I remember just how, again, talk about a movie on a shoestring. That movie, if you think Rocky was made on it's an outrageous budget, I think Once was probably made for far less than that. I don't think they were even actors. They were just kind of living out their story. But those songs just connected, and he was digging into something very deep in the folk music tradition that he translated onto a big stage. And who doesn't respect authenticity out there? And he had it in spades.
I mean, it was super authentic. You know what that movie what the feel of that movie?
As was Rocky, by the way. I was just thinking about why they had a budget. And I was thinking, well, boxing was a whole different thing back in 1975, 1976, right? I mean, boxing was the sport. So they probably probably creating those fights and giving it that sense of money in, money out probably cost them more than you think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but I mean,
Boxing
that movie
doesn't have
actually
too
had
much
like
credit.
professional actors in
Yeah.
it too, like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
once,
Sylvester
like these people
yeah,
I
and
know,
Sylvester Stallone.
but like the feel I got for Once, and I think one of the reasons that it felt so authentic is it was sort of shot almost feeling like a documentary. Like it just seemed like it was a person holding a camera while you watched musicians make an album,
Very much so. It was like
and it
before
had that kind of
sunrise.
feeling to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, I think it was a lot of the dialogue was spur of the moment. Like the Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy movie. I don't know if you remember that. Before Sunrise, they did a trilogy and a lot of it was made up on the spot. Just put the camera on and I think Glenn was living what he was living at that time. So no better way than no less filtered way to get your sound out there.
I gotta say, Fritz, your background is pretty remarkable. I don't think I've ever had a guest that had any sort of backstory that's quite like this. Just to clue in the
Yeah, I'm
viewers
not
and
sure why I'm
listeners.
still at it.
I mean, that might be my question, but Yale history degree, worked in environmental journalism, had a a career on Broadway, actor, director, and you were a dramaturg.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's a career, right? That's a Wikipedia page. That's an obituary, God forbid, when you get to that point in your life. But you decided after all that, I'm going to start over as a songwriter, years into an already successful creative life.
Yeah.
What prompted the transition?
Well, I got COVID, to be honest with you. I'd come back really a couple of years before COVID. I started really, I'd always studied the guitar and studied the piano. I'd been taking, I've studied guitar and studied piano guitar my entire adult life. I started doing piano quite intensely in 2015 or 2016. And then I came back from doing a summer production of David Mamet's November. And there was a band at my kid's school that needed a bass player, and I hadn't played the bass before, but I was like, I'll give it a shot. I like performing. I can get up there. I remember the first song we were doing was Superstition. She said, just make sure you hit the E on the one, and you'll be fine. And like a few months later, we were had a gig at the bitter end. But then COVID came along, and I found myself living alone in a shoebox apartment, and it was a very complicated time in my life, and somehow songwriting seemed like the most natural way to channel. I used to be one of these people. I used to think, oh, hey, all these songs have been written, and stick with cover, are they there? But then stuff came out of me, and I was fortunate enough to meet Tosh, who's my producer, lead guitar player, now bandmate. And sure enough, I decided to take the skills that I'd learned on stage and behind the camera, in front of the camera, and in performance, and apply them to music. I don't think I'm the only one who's done it, really. I mean, I was watching. Kevin Bacon left his film career to pursue music. I know, who was it? I was just watching an interview with Mick Jagger, who the guy was asking a lot about his favorite film roles of Mick Jagger. So, I think there's a healthy. With the exception of maybe visual artists, I think all performing artists share a common desire to communicate somehow and to share that live context.
Certainly, some of the skills that you were able to bring into music were transferable from your prior life, right? Like the performing, the communication, the storytelling aspect. But there was a lot about your newfound career in music where you had to start as a beginner. And
Absolutely.
for a lot of people who, build success and have already built skills in another field, it can be hard to be a beginner at something, to be a novice at something. Was that difficult for you? Did you have trouble making that transition, or were you the kind of person that you had no problem starting at square one for some things?
That's funny you say that. I have two daughters who are 19 and 20 now, and they were quite a bit younger at the time. But they were at that age, especially when I started with the piano, where you're asking a lot of your kids to go out and play soccer and go do this swimming and go do this and go do that. And I said to myself, I better start working. I got to show that I'm willing to start again and learn things from scratch and practice. And that was especially with the piano and with some of this to show them that yeah, adults do this as well, and we're always going to be reinventing ourselves, and it's a useful skill to continue to hone. You never know where it's going to take you.
I like that. And in terms of the skills that you were able to transfer into music, there's a lot of theater in what you do, and a lot of theater background both in you and your band members. Several of your band members came out of the experimental theater industry, and I feel like there's a lot of experimental theater ethos that finds its way into Young Allies. Can you talk a little bit about how that theater-born way of working and making art affects how Young Allies makes music?
Of course. I mean, for us, yes, Gavin and I we're both involved with Elevator Repair Service, which is probably I'll say it, the best downtown New York experimental theater. They work a lot with found texts. We did the Great Gatsby word for all 49,000 words, and it's had a number of runs all over the world, but at least 3 in New York. And that's very much about taking found texts, reinventing them, throwing against the wall, see what sticks. It's a very deliberate and long rehearsal process, much as creating a song or an EP is. And then Isaac, who's our drummer, was in Blue Man Group for 13 years. So he's coming off of a theater background of drumming and being blue 8 times a week. So, Blue Man Group?
Yeah,
Yes.
those guys are incredible.
Right, I know. I mean, he's an incredible drummer. He's an incredible performer. His stamina is unbelievable. I mean, the things I remember going to see Blue Man Group, and I said, "My God, who are these guys?" Right? I got one of the founders of it maybe 20 years ago, but yeah, Isaac was a tremendous find. And then Gavin, I had been working with on music videos for my songs, and I realized he was also a musician, and so we teamed up, and he went from he still directs the videos, but also to playing bass and becoming a collaborator of mine. So that was a little bit of pulling the band together, which is a lot like pulling together a play or a film, for that matter, and understanding what and finding, searching for the sound together. We're going to be in a room. Our process is very collaborative. We have general arrangements for all of our songs, which sound mostly like the ones that are on the EP or on my solo stuff. But from that point on, we're always, someone's going to come up with an idea. Oh, let's sing it this way. Let's add backups here, and that's really the joy of performing, of getting on the road or getting into theaters and doing it, because that's, the studio is one thing and it's great, but there's something about, lights going down. I still am always amazed to hear the drummer count out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and suddenly the music's there, and that's just I've remembered. I just remember that from every concert I go to, and especially playing. That to think that you're playing your part, but it's all there. Or it has to be there, because, or else what are you going to do? Every now and again the set will fall down, but at least you're giving it your best shot.
Well, one thing that jumped out at me as I've been listening to the new EP all day is the sense of like momentum and building within the songs. Every song,
Yes.
and maybe I attribute this to you as knowing how to tell a story, but every song seems to start one place and then progressively build upon musical themes or arrangements. How did you go about crafting that as a band, and were there any of the arrangements that I'm thinking of particularly of You Can Never Tell that were difficult to come up with? How did you do that? Or like you never can tell.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
you
I
never
should get it
can
right.
tell. Yeah, well, that's a funny. You never can tell. It's kind of the surprise, or the kind of bonus track, I suppose. We needed an EP had to have 10 minutes of 10 minutes of music on it. We didn't have a 10-minute song. We had 3 songs, and we had played a series of gigs in Long Island City, and I had wanted to do a couple of covers, because I always think it's a great way for a band to connect with an audience. If you play a song that's loved and well known, it lets people know what you're all about. And I had been thinking of You Never Can Tell. I just thought it'd be a fabulous song to play, because I've always loved it. And I've mentioned it to Phil, who is our keyboard player, and I said, hey, Phil, what do you think about You Never Can Tell? And he goes, Fritz, I've played that song at just about every solo gig that I've ever played. And I was like, really? I said, well, all right, that's your song. And that one in particular, we did it live, and then just came in and we did it all in one day in the studio, kind of like the old school session musicians.
Yeah.
None of us are that. Well, I guess Tosh is an old school session musician, but we all acted like that and did the whole arrangement in one day. So that one's probably a little different. The other songs, they build over a process. I like to think I have I try to look for the arc of a story, the things that repeat, so that you walk away. It's up to the listener to interpret what they really hear in there, but I try to make it something that I would want to hear, and things that I want to hear usually have a build and take you places. And so that's what I'm looking for when I'm arranging something, and when we start to rehearse it and build and maybe it starts off slowly and the chorus takes off and it takes you down, and then there's a bridge, and then the chorus goes in a different place. I just think that's the flow of a song, and to me that's what you're looking for.
Well, and like Watchmen almost seems to, and tell me if I'm just grasping at stuff here,
Yeah.
but Watchmen almost feels to me to follow like a 3-act structure. Like I can feel
I
it
think so.
going. Was that intentional?
I wouldn't say it was intentional. Watchmen, I stumbled upon some pieces of it were pulled from a medieval troubadour's song from 1050 that I spotted in a poetry anthology, and it was sung in the south of France. And it was a song about a couple and the coming of dawn and trying to hold on to the night, and the stages of that, it was them being very much in the moment, the dawn coming, the reflection of that, and then the passage of time. So, yeah, I like to think of things. I think of things in threes, beginning, middle, end. I stage things in threes. I think there's a certain symmetry to it, and I think 3 is a great number for to work with.
Okay, so
That's
indulge me here, because I love talking about songwriting. And when
Yeah.
I'm listening to the new EP, for me, the first time I listened to it, I felt like I was like, oh, this is like, what if the Fray had some swing to it? And then I was like, okay, no, because it's a short EP. You can listen. I listened to it 5 or 6 times a day.
Oh, thanks.
And no, it's a really great record, and like to listen to it, like all the songs are cohesive, but they are all very different. Did you have any that you left on the cutting room floor that you're saving for something else, or did you craft these 3 plus the Chuck Berry number to sort of be your statement, and that was your vision from the beginning?
Yeah, no, these three, I started, the band kind of came together, prior to this, I've been doing a lot of like solo performing and with Tosh, we played a couple of times. We've done some solo acoustic gigs with my old songs, and we played some jazz gigs too. We'd been doing some gigs, but at one point last winter, we had a full band together. And at that point, I had been working on a couple of new songs and wanted to give them the full band. I also played in a jazz band for a while, and I really thought about how all the people in a jazz band contribute to really give it the rehearsal process and to have the arrangements come out of that. And I think out of that came the band, and out of that came these songs. So which came first, I don't really know, but I wanted it to be a more collaborative experience than I'd experienced during COVID, especially. It seemed like another natural step forward for me as a songwriter and as a musician.
Let's talk more about the dynamics with your band. I've read that sort of the leadership style that's embraced there is a collaborative one. You're not big on hierarchies in the decision-making process of this band. Tell us a little bit more about like how your band, works together, relates together, and do you have any, pieces of advice for our creator listeners who are in bands or are in creator groups and how to manage dynamics and keep everybody happy and keep the art coming?
I think you're extremely fortunate if you find people you like to work with and hold on to that. As you said, starting and keeping up a career as a performing artist is extremely challenging and can be a very solitary pursuit. And I've always found, whether it was in theater or in film, I've been very fortunate along the way to have met, whether it was playwrights or a director who took me under their wing, or an artistic director at theater who cast me a lot, or a movie director who took a chance on me. None of it happened in a vacuum, or by myself. So I guess in that way, I'm a real, and I'm a director, so I'm used to consulting with everyone. Yes, the director is in charge of things, but Tosh, for example, is lead guitar player, an incredible arranger, incredible producer. He's produced the songs. He really is a incredible producer, and the more you rely on everyone else's strengths, there's strength in numbers.
Are there any common threads that you found amongst your collaborators that make them so effective?
I think we all get along. There's that kind of alchemy, I guess, that comes along once you're in the rehearsal room and playing together. Like I said, like with Phil, figuring out that he loves You Never Can Tell, and I love You Never Can Tell. That was, we just kind of looked at each other. We were in my apartment when that happened. He was over. He was actually giving me piano lessons. And we got talking about it, and he's got this great laconic way about himself. And he said, "Yeah, I played that song at just about every solo gig. I love it." And he and I are both, I listened to a lot of Jerry Garcia when I was younger, so I knew that song both from the Jerry Garcia band and from Pulp Fiction. And Chuck Berry, is also just such a great person to learn music from. But after listening to You Never Can Tell, I want to go write a song with two chords and some really fun themes, whether it's teenage love, collecting records, buying a stereo, going to New Orleans. He just doesn't miss a beat on it and has fun doing it.
Well, now predicting the future is always dangerous, and they say if you ever want to make God laugh, make plans. But where do you think is next for you? Are you thinking you're going to stay with music for a while, or are you going to find a new kind of creative interest because you've already done like the Broadway stuff, and now you're doing music, and now you might do something else? Like, What does 5 years from now look like potentially?
Well, I'm having a blast doing this now, and I'm starting to figure out how to do it. Just like when I was starting before. Okay, here's who you got to meet in order to do this, and here's where you should be booking something next. And the advantage of having done it before is that you can kind of replicate it. Although listening to your podcast, it's in some ways it's refreshing to me because I don't have a lot of the preconceptions in my head about the problems in it. I can kind of see my way through that a little bit, and it can't be any worse than being in Los Angeles. And I remember going out for a UPS commercial and someone saying, "Oh, can you be more like a young Danny Glover?" And and I wasn't really sure if I could pull that off. And
Young,
yeah, so
getting too young for this shit.
yeah, I'm getting too young for that. That was on La Brea somewhere, and that.
You give off young Danny Glover, like as I kind of look at it now. Yeah,
that's what I thought too. I was kind of surprised they threw that one at me. I really didn't know what to say. I didn't. But that's Hollywood, and I mean, I had some really incredible experiences there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I met incredible people, and it certainly has given me enough confidence to. But it was also interesting because it gave me a lot of. I think being trained as an actor, just we always say, "Oh, we're our own instrument," and I sing in the band, and I think that learning to be a singer, a rock and roll singer, is really about just singing. Don't worry too much about it. I'm not going to be an opera singer right away. Just, sing truthfully, and people will respond. And get good female and have great female background singers.
That always helps. Our guest has been Fritz Michel of Young Allies. Check out the new EP, Fingers Entwined. You can find out more by visiting youngallies.com. Fritz, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for taking us on this journey of all the cool stuff you've done as a creator. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Well, I heard what you were saying about the motorcycles beforehand, and that we should be getting rid of all the motorcycles. But if we didn't have if the motorcycles had all gone away, you wouldn't have that great Richard Thompson song, the 1952 Black Vincent.
Oh, damn it. Oh, how short-sighted of me.
So I guess I would say to anyone out there, keep listening and keep looking for the golden. Don't shut anything out until they drag you away from it.
Oh, you're living that. I love that for you. Fritz, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Our thanks to Fritz Michel and Zach Sloan. Our thanks to producer Lauren. And thanks to all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.